Danger Pro Wrestling couldn't have helped themselves. They needed to capitalize on the Raja Jackson situation by putting up a supposed now fake Instagram post that they had booked Raja Jackson on one of their shows for a future date to be released and also the name of his opponent. And then the wrestling media world, even though all of the dirt sheets, I say don't follow them, don't interact with them, don't do anything with the dirt sheets because the dirt sheets will take things and twist things and they will create a divisiveness within the pro wrestling bubble that is on social media. However, in this instance, why would you as a company risk doing something like this, knowing how wrestling media journalists, even though we made that up and that's not really a real title, knowing that they're going to run with it and they may not even get it cleared and there's no extra sort of information as to why you guys wanted to maybe book Roger Jackson, even though in hindsight and me doing a little bit more research that you guys put on your Instagram channel, that this is a fake Instagram post. In the light of everything, of the incident and what led up to the incident, you still want to try to capitalize on the publicity. And, not all publicity is good publicity. And in this instance, even if it was a joke, it really wasn't funny. First of all, there is still an ongoing LAPD investigation with a detective now, and they have labeled the situation between Roger Jackson and Psycho Stu, as a felony battery, which I have not heard of it that way, which is kind of interesting. They have labeled it as a felony. Before I get more into that and some other things I want to talk about on part 2 of the Roger Jackson situation, I would just like to say that if you saw the thumbnail, we are going to be talking about the repercussions of trying to capitalize on the clout. And this is very, very bad clout. It's not even like, let's make a meme out of it and let's make a joke out of it because it becomes a joke later on. This whole situation between Raja and Psycho Stu has been blown way out of proportion. We have people that come into comments that are super emotional about this when it's like, you don't need to be emotional about it. And we also have people that come into the comment section wanting to really discourage people and not have them speak their opinions and give the facts and also break down what happened and give you a reality of what happens in the back with the boys, especially for those that work in the business. I work in the business. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new episode of the Square Circle Podcast. I am your host, Marie Shadows, and I have worked in the business. I have worked behind the scenes for various promotions and I have vlogs on it and stuff like that. So I understand the behind the scenes culture of things. And most of the time when I'm looking at videos, when I'm just trying to catch up on the latest news of this stuff and then reading comments, whether that's on Facebook or even comments to me on my own channel on youtube.com/Square Circle Podcast. There's a lot of people that don't understand the business. And I did hear some snippets from the Jim Cornette podcast talking about the situation too. And he's right. Most people online think that they know about pro wrestling, but you guys really don't know anything about pro wrestling. So let me back up before I just go 100 miles per hour and just talk all over the place, because I do want to bring awareness to certain things that I am seeing, and we should just talk about it. We should have an open and honest conversation. That's what I did with the first podcast episode that is named Raja Jackson Situation. Jail does not equal lesson learned, right? And I gave a different perspective, even though the overarching umbrella agreement that I have with everybody on this subject is that Roger Jackson should go to jail. However, when you send him to jail, what will he learn in jail? That was a question that I kept asking. But of course, people who are emotional don't want to hear that. People who are emotional want me to tell them what they already want to know. And it's like, I already told you what you want to know. Yes, I am in agreement that Roger Jackson should go to jail for doing this crime, for attacking Stu the way that he did. Those 20 to 22 punches right in the face and having him to go to the hospital. And Stu is a United States veteran. Like, there is no excuse for that. However, I was also trying to have fans and people who listen to podcast episodes, who listen to sports and stuff like that, to think a little bit bigger than the actual situation. Because while, yes, 100%, Roger Jackson is in the wrong, and we all want Stu to make a speedy recovery, a very well and healthy recovery, we still need to talk about the other components in the room, because this has been happening way too much, where streamers will be IRL streaming and they do very chaotic stuff in the real world, and they don't get any accountability for it. There's no accountability for the massive amount of people on the internet that end up making these live streamers do crazy ass shit. And I understand that everybody is their own person. Everybody is accountable for their own stuff. But what happens when the internet actually gets too big? And I've said it before in my other podcast episodes that you can't really control the masses on the internet. It's way too big. You can't do that. But we can identify that we have what we call online as chat hoppers. So whatever happens in Rampage Jackson's stream, those chatters will probably jump over to Roger Jackson's live stream, talk some shit, maybe say some stuff that's not appropriate, and Roger's gonna get upset and Roger's gonna react to it. And he's going to have a very visceral reaction to whatever the chat hoppers say to Roger Jackson. And the same thing goes from Roger Jackson's chat. Those people are going to jump over to Rampage and be like, your son did this, your son did that, your son is in trouble, why are you not being a parent? Like, all this shit talking, those people will say in Rampage's chat. So Rampage is going to get upset and he's going to show some vitriol as well too, and then, you know, act out. And this is what I was trying to get people to listen to when I was making the first episode talking about the situation, that yes, I agree with everybody. Roger should be in jail. Roger should do time for the crime of almost killing Psycho Stu. But also, we have a bigger thing at play, a bigger issue at play, and that is social media and how that plays a role in automatically having people lose their emotions and doing the unthinkable. And then if we just send them to jail, are they going to learn that social media is a problem? They're the problem. They allow social media to manipulate them. And how they're going to learn that in jail if there's no extra stuff added to a sentence. And by the way, I did set out a proposal of like maybe Roger gets 1 year with 3 years of community service in a veteran home, and then anger management classes and therapy with his dad, Rampage Jackson, so they can all get to the root of the problems between both of these men. Because it is kind of shocking that they're going to be streaming 24/7 and don't think that they should have some father-son time to talk about the problems that they want to run away from. And one of the things I want to bring up, even though I started this podcast episode with talking about Danger Pro Wrestling, we'll get to them in a little bit, but I wanted to talk about the fact that Rampage Jackson, on his Kick streaming account when he was live streaming, he mentioned how Raja is still trying to deal with the fact that his mother died, which is unfortunate that his mother died. Rampage does not go into any details on how Raja's mother died. He just says that he knows that his son is trying to deal with it. His son has distanced himself from Rampage and he thinks that Raja wants to be his own man. And ever since then, they don't have a father-son relationship. And watching other videos and other content creators saying that Rampage Jackson is a failure of a father, I agree. I just don't want to pile on. I just think that if you're not going to have the conversation, it's going to be super uncomfortable. And this whole situation that happened could have been avoided if you really thought that he was still trying to deal with it. And then with the way that he was acting, the way that chat got him upset, the way that Raja apparently didn't understand wrestling, but always said that beating up a wrestler was on his bucket list. Like he knew, but then acted like he didn't know. So like there's a lot of different factors. And I do think that eventually Rampage should have been a man to sit his son down and be like, look, we got to talk about this. I know it's bothering you. You've been distant to me. Like you just have to tell him. And I think that if he would just listen and let Raja basically tell him everything how he's feeling, in a perfect world, this would be great. I think that this situation would have never happened. This would have never been so mainstream bad for everyone involved, you know? And I am not trying to make excuses. I'm not trying to find a loophole of like, hey, I'm not trying to make excuses. Let me just leave it at that. I am trying to look at this from a different perspective rather than let's throw Raja in jail and let's throw away the key and that's it. Normally, yes. However, why is this the first time that Rampage is talking about this kind of stuff? Now, I don't follow Rampage and I don't follow Raja on Kick Streaming. I just got rid of my Kick Streaming account because I just can't with Kick anymore. So other than that, why is it taking all of the content creators that are speaking out about this? Why is it now the time when Rampage is like, oh, I think Raja is still dealing with the effects of his mother dying? Why is that being brought to light? Because if you know as a parent, and sometimes Rampage wants to go online and be like, well, if only you were a parent, you would know, like, you'll still love all your kids and blah, blah, blah. But like, if you are the parent and you know that this is bothering your son, Raja, would you not want to one day just sit him down and be like, bro, we got to talk about this because, I loved her too because we created you. So what are you feeling, or at least take it to a therapist and don't live stream it. My issue is that now this information is coming to light days after Raja almost ends up killing somebody in the ring. Even though he's not a trained professional wrestler, he is not. He is an MMA fighter. But only now this is coming to light when the content creators are calling out Rampage Jackson for being a failure of a father. And then if you scroll through like YouTube shorts or anywhere else, maybe like TikTok or something like that, and because Rampage is streaming 24/7, there are people coming up to Rampage to get under his skin and being like, hey, I can't wait to go into Raja mode, or why are you out here bowling with some whores and not with your son? Stuff like that. And it's like, why are you neglecting your son that is in a very terrible situation where you should be with him to try to understand what's happening and basically turn him into the LAPD, turn him in and go visit Stu and see how he's doing and see what his family thinks and see how we are all going to try to make this right. Be the father that you want everybody to think that you are, if that makes sense. Like, step up and be like, son, you did a very terrible thing. We got to talk about it. Even though in Rampage's online tweets, he basically didn't understand the full situation and didn't see what happened. And there goes that disconnect, even though the evidence is as plain as what happened. But, he's Rampage Jackson. He has to keep his cool while he's online and don't let nobody try to get under his skin. But it happens. It really does. So I just want to bring that awareness, that other thoughts coming in, and not just parroting everybody that just says, lock him up and throw him in jail, which, yes, I agree. I'm going to be saying that over and over again. I agree. However, we also need to try to hold other people accountable for the way that it led up to this being an explosive and maybe a divisive kind of conversation. And I say divisive because most people that are talking about this, especially in Facebook comments and stuff like that, they don't know anything about the wrestling business. I'm going to tell you right now, you cannot gimmick a can. You cannot gimmick a can. A can is going to be a can. So like if they decided to bring like a case of beer, that's going to be a real case of beer from like the store. So you cannot gimmick a can. You cannot do that. I know it's professional wrestling, and professional wrestling has a lot of stage stuff, a lot of props, the same as a theater, but please stop trying to be like, oh, the can was gimmicked, this wasn't real. Stop that. You guys don't know about professional wrestling, and those are the trolls that come in and want to just gaslight everybody into thinking that like whatever they say is stupid no matter what, and the goalposts are always going to be moved. So back to the Facebook comments. The Facebook comments, the one thing that I keep seeing as the talking point is the can that Psycho Stu took off of the table and hit it on the side of the head of Raja Jackson. And everybody wants to focus on that and wants to make that the talking point. And I'm like, guys, there is a lot more to this than just a beer can. And it just goes to show you that society is so programmed to be ghetto with it. And when I say to be ghetto with it, is that it does not matter. You have to stand on business and you have to defend yourself. And most people would be like, oh, he should have never done that. He should have got punched out. Why is he doing that? You got to respect someone's boundaries and someone's body. And it's like in professional wrestling, there are workers and workers are talent. And you understand that in the universe of professional wrestling, that sometimes you want to create an angle and you're going to go and grab something and you're going to hit it to somebody and somebody just needs to sell. That does not mean that that person has ill will towards the person that they're working with. Now, in this case, I'm going to repeat it again. Raja was not a worker. He is just an MMA fighter. He was there to have a good time, and everyone else involved in this should have just told the boys in a production meeting. This is where you get everybody's attention. Tell the boys in a production meeting, like, hey, Raja's here just to view the show. He's Rampage's son. You guys could take pictures. You guys could be nice, all that kind of shit. You have to tell them up front. But if you're not going to tell them up front, this is what happens. And this is what leads to stuff happening unexpectedly. Either way, the people in the comments on Facebook are so triggered over something like that, as if like they think that wrestling is real life, to the point where they think that they have to defend their turf. They have to defend themselves because in their worldview, they think that everybody is out to get them. They think that that was intentional. That wasn't intentional. Most things in wrestling are not intentional. You can tell the difference between something that is intentional in wrestling versus something that is not intentional at wrestling. So whether or not that is a beer can or a regular can, we're never going to know. We just know it's a can. But I will tell you there was no bad intentions. So I really do need to stop seeing comment sections with, oh, the beer can this, the can that, the gimmick can. And they use the can, and how dare they do that to Raja? Stop using the beer can as a way to dismiss everything else. because that was just a small little part in every single little thing that got played and what we have right now. Before I continue on with some more thoughts, I would like to say thank you to the wrestling community and also those outside of the wrestling community. If you guys don't know, I have a free wrestling newsletter called the Square Circle Podcast Hub. You can go visit it at marieshadows.substack.com, and that link will be down in the description box and also in the pinned comment. But I am so thankful that the first episode that I did on the whole Raja Jackson situation, within a total of 48 hours, we have had 594 downloads of that podcast episode just strictly on my Substack. Everywhere else, all the numbers are flowing in very, very slow. If you're on Spotify, you can listen to it there. If you are on YouTube, you can listen to it there. But I am so very thankful for the Substack community. Thank you guys so much for downloading and listening to it. Again, if you have any comments and if you want some really good discussions that aren't really emotionally filled, you can leave some comments down below on that one, on the free wrestling newsletter, and even on this one too. Conversations like this on my podcast, the Square Circle Podcast, will always be free. The same way if I do review shows for professional wrestling and call out whatever AEW does wrong and talk about my time at MLW, talk about my time at WWE, talk about times on the indies, those will be free. The podcast will be free to listen to unless I decide to do something different where that content is a little bit more research heavy, topic heavy, where it will be behind a paywall. But for the majority of my podcast, it is free on Substack. So sign up for free. You're not missing out. If you want to be a part of the conversation, I say to do so now. Jump on board and come along for this journey. Now, back to our regularly scheduled programming, where I do want to talk about comments on one of my posts over at youtube.com/Square Circle Podcast in the community tab. Because again, like I said, while yes, this can be emotional for some people, which I don't understand, we need to get back to a certain point in life where not everything has to have an emotional trigger. If you want to talk about it, you don't need to get emotional. You don't need to call people stupid. You don't need to try to attack somebody online just because they are not fulfilling your emotional needs. That is not their problem. In this case, it's not my problem. But let's just talk about this, because a day ago when I released and dropped the first Raja podcast, in the live stream, I legit had somebody named Brian, and that person is a troll because that person has not even responded to anything that I have really said. And they were a troll. And this was the same kind of trolling that people on Twitter would do when they said that AEW gimmicked a chair. And it's like, you cannot gimmick a chair in professional wrestling. You cannot shave down a steel chair. Like, if you go to Target and you're buying a steel chair, you're buying a steel chair. You're going to use it for like a hardcore match. You're going to use it for a spot. Most promotions, when they book venues are going to have a steel chair. There is no way to shave that down to gimmick a chair. Cody Rhodes likes to talk out his ass most of the time, and he would say that he came up with like ideas and shared ideas of, you know, how can we make this a little bit more safer and stuff. You cannot gimmick a chair. You can't. End of discussion. The same way that you cannot gimmick a beer can or a can. It is what it is. You're going to buy it how it is. If you decide to sand it down, then it's going to be completely fake. And then the same trolls that will tell you and gaslight you that you can gimmick a chair, those same trolls are going to be like, oh, see how wrestling is fake? Oh my God, wrestling is so fake. How do you watch that? Aren't you an adult? Why don't you stop watching a kid's show? Because that's a fake chair. So let me read you this conversation. And the reason why I'm bringing all of this up with like comments and stuff like that is because social media is playing a bigger and bigger role when it comes to conversations that we're having, cultural issues that we're having, political issues that we're having, real life streamers and everything that they do, but there's no accountability for what they do and how they act upon stuff. Even though, again, I do understand that everyone is an individual, but social media to peer pressure into people, in the first episode, I said how back in the day you got peer pressure and people were to bother you and people were to bully you. That all got switched to online. So again, how can we hold people accountable for the stuff that they say online to egg somebody on and remain in their home as if like they didn't contribute to that? Why are we not holding them accountable? Why are we not trying to look online to be like, hey, this gotta stop or slow down, or we gotta teach people who want to be real life streamers to be like, hey, don't always listen to chat. Follow your instinct. Don't do it for the thrill of the 15 minutes and then you get bad publicity and there's no way for you to come back and you ruin your life because you thought that the audience that you have is going to be right there with you when they are not going to be right there with you. You know what I mean? So I said in this post, a legit conversation in my live stream today. Brian wanted to silence what I had to say about the Rampage Jackson situation. I have a different take than everybody else. While every content creator is calling for Roger to be put in jail and jail alone, I'm bringing a different viewpoint into this unfortunate situation. My viewpoint is simple. My proposal, 1 year in jail plus 3 years of community service at a veteran's home because Psycho Stu is a USA veteran. Pair that with anger management classes and therapy, ideally with his father, Rampage Jackson. But Brian probably didn't want to hear my nuanced take on the situation, just trying to discourage me from speaking up and explaining the situation in a different light, aka talking about social media and how social media is damaging and all that kind of stuff because it does play a factor. Again, I am not trying to say any excuses for Roger, the situation, and the other situation we need to talk about, but just the idea of like, social media is at fault here too, but we just let social media slide. The more times that we allow social media to slide in situations like this, the Rampage Jackson situation, and we allow social media to basically slide whenever the kids end up crashing their cars on the highway and causing accidents, the more time we let social media slide, we're going to have a lot more worse issues on our hands. And then Congress is going to come in and make laws that you guys are going to basically yell about and be like, how dare you restrict my freedom of speech and my freedom of expression? So if we sort of rein in what's currently happening, you guys won't have to have that situation in the future because you know that that might end up fucking happening. Because the more times that people complain and people make police reports, and in the police report it will say social media did this. This is a live streamer. They have a social media chat. The chat was this, blah, blah, blah. If the social media stuff becomes a repeated offense and a repeated thing within these police reports, Congress is going to step in and you guys are not going to like it. This is why I'm bringing up social media in addition to the situation. So let me keep going. Brian came into my chat to tell me that he saw a slow-mo version of Raja punching Psycho Stu. And Brian in my chat with his full chest said that it was all fake punches and that Raja did not really hit Psycho Stu and that Psycho Stu had no bruises on his face. This is what I wrote in the paragraph. You saw a slow-mo version? Okay. Is that supposed to impress me and have me think like a sheep like you? Raja didn't punch him for real? Oh, really? We all saw the same footage and the punches connected and Psycho Stu had blood streaming down his face and ear. Explain how Raja got the blood on his shirt. I legit asked him that in the live stream. Brian, with all of his chest, says razors. I say, why would an MMA fighter who believes that real fighting is superior to stage fighting, aka wrestling, would use wrestling tactics? Raja walks out from the scene after punching Stu. He didn't have time to put the razor away or hide it. It was all live stream. It would have been a farce. But regardless, to do all of that for a bad payoff, to make all of that to be staged and fake and have a supposed razor according to Brian, and then walks away as if it's like a hit and run, to do all of that for a bad payoff where mainstream media and the top content creators and the top people in the wrestling space are talking about it nonstop. What kind of publicity would that give for Nox Pro? It has been a very bad week of PR for Nox Pro, a very bad week. And this again goes to the idea that trolls are out here to control the narrative for I don't know why. Why are you trying to defend Raja or not even defend Raja or try to be like, hey, this isn't real. I'm going to gaslight you right now because we live in an alternate universe where this didn't happen. And it's like, you don't gain anything from that, Brian. You don't. To which, after I had questioned Brian so much, Brian really does say the most stupidest thing that I had to screenshot. Brian says, should John Cena go to jail for all the fake punches he threw too? Really, dude? Remain stupid and don't make yourself look like a fool like this ever again. And so at the end of my post, I did say, please watch the full video, and I linked my live stream of the first episode talking about this situation so that way people can actually look at the chat and replay and just hear me out, right? Just hear me out. That's all. But then we got Chris over here. Now, before I get into Chris's stuff, I just want to say that he did apologize to me after the fact. He apologized to me this morning because he realized that he was wrong. And he was wrong because he made a lot of assumptions about me and thought that I was a clout chaser. And I'm like, I'm not clout chasing for this situation for it to be trendy. Any of my conversations in my back catalog talking about what is trendy and not trendy, I don't do it for clout. I do it for giving a different perspective while still agreeing that he should go to jail for this because it is 100% wrong. But we also need to ask other questions other than sending Raja to jail. Or in this case, this whole episode is supposed to be about Danger Pro Wrestling, but I don't really know too much about them. They've been around for a year. They have a YouTube channel. I'm really thinking about doing a live tape study review of one of their shows and see what they're all about. But they've been around for a year. They're in the SoCal area. And as a joke, according to them, as a joke, because all of us here are like, yo, Raja has not been picked up by the police yet to get a statement or anything like that. And yet then this company wants to book him for their next event. And I'm like, why should he get rewarded? So if you saw the title of the thumbnail, it does say Raja Jackson gets booked does not equal lesson learned. And this is the whole thing about this episode, is that doing stuff like that is in poor taste when there's still an ongoing investigation. And I understand you want to be part of the clout. I understand you wanted to get into the algorithm because, again, the whole social media thing is about what you put out to get into the algorithm so you could get eyes on you. I totally get the whole marketing stuff, but this is a very bad situation, a very bad look, and it did not really help their company at all to try to get new fans, viewers, people who bought tickets. And honestly, before I did some digging and some research, I really thought it was real like everybody else. But TMZ confirms that it's not real. Even Danger Pro, the IG channel, was like, oh, this isn't real, but you guys ran with it and stuff. But it's like, why are you trying to make your company look bad? Why? Why are you trying to get on that bad clout? Like, that's not going to help you guys get out of that. Anyway, we should not be rewarding bad things with a booking, with thinking that it's not a big deal. And it just shows that even though they put in the caption that they want Stu to get better, they want Stu to be healthy again, it's still a bad look that you would try to capitalize on something so fucking unfortunate and something that did not need to go down. If the people that were running Nox Pro did the right thing and tell the roster, hey, Rampage Jackson's son is here, act appropriately. You wouldn't reward a toddler or maybe like a 7-year-old that knows right from wrong. You wouldn't reward them if they did something bad. So that's how I took it for Danger Pro Wrestling to just put up a post saying, coming soon to Danger Pro Wrestling, Raja Jackson. Stay tuned for the date and his potential opponent. So that's how I took the message, that you're rewarding bad behavior, even though in the same breath you say that you wish Stu the best recovery that he can get right now. But you still want to go ahead and get the clout. And it's like, who can trust you after that? So back to the YouTube post with the comments. At first, I didn't know if Chris was talking to me. So clarification, he is talking to me. And he goes and says, my question is, did you watch everything? That was very clearly premeditated and an attempt to beat that man to death. Broken jaw, knocked out almost all of his teeth, broken orbital bone, multiple concussions. Do I need to go on? They had to put that man in a coma so he didn't die. Are you all stupid? What am I missing here? First of all, you don't need to say, are you stupid? Are you this? Whatever. You don't need to do any of that. If you would have just watched the entire live stream, I break everything down. I questioned why Raja had that on his bucket list of wanting to punch out a wrestler, even though Raja said that that's always one of his dreams, and the whole MMA thing and the wrestler thing. Like, I even questioned that. However, I did push back on Chris that the hospital did not put him in a coma for him to survive. He woke up a couple days later. And again, no sources to let me know where Chris found that. And then Chris tells me that my proposal is a slap on the wrist. It's really not a slap on the wrist. It's just an idea to put out into the world to see what people might think about it. Because if I'm presenting the whole entire sphere of this, we're going to call it a sphere because there's so much factors into this. This isn't just a straight black and white case. If and when this goes to court, because when it does go to court, right, the judge is going to want every single kind of evidence that has occurred in this whole entire situation. And sometimes, depending on the lawyer, maybe the lawyer could be like, hey, I want all of the chat logs from that live stream. And since Raja got banned off a Kick, that means that the lawyer is going to have to maybe send a subpoena to Kick and be like, hey, I need Raja's channel and I need the chat logs. Because again, the judge is going to want to have every single kind of evidence submitted so that way the jury can get the full story and they can decide what they're going to do if this goes to court. Okay, I am not a lawyer. I am not part of the legal team. I'm just letting you know, what I've seen, what I've studied, but I do not have a degree in any of that. But this just seems the logical steps to take if this was to go to court because they're already doing an investigation. But you never know. Lawyers could be like, Judge, I would like to get such and such to get the chat logs and submit that as evidence. And again, that's not a way of me saying to excuse the behavior, because in any ordinary situation, if this happened in the street where the guy came up to him and just hit him with a beer can and they had a fight, yeah, black and white situation. You know, you can definitely see the evidence of like, this happened, you know, send them to jail. Now, in this case with wrestling, because it gets a little muddy, like I said in the first episode, that you have to account for what happens in the wrestling world. The wrestling world does not operate in the same sort of rules and invisible rules of the real world. Why do you think most of the outspoken, idiotic wrestling journalists on wrestling Twitter will be like, I don't like what you said, and I'm standing up for a humanitarian cause, and I want to fight you for charity. So that way their ass don't go to jail. This is why the wrestling world gets a little weird, a little muddy when it comes to something like this. And personally, I would just like to prepare my audience for what to look out for, what to think about. Not just like, hey, listen to my podcast, just send Roger to jail. That's it. We're no longer talking about it. There are other conversations to be had other than, yes, we agree, send him to jail. But what do we do about the rest of the evidence? And then what do we do for the future so that way degenerate content does not keep flooding our social media timelines and does not have us be brainwashed and does not have us think that in order for us to get 15 minutes of fame to try to get like $1 million out of people that send in super chats and send you donations, that you must do something crazy and idiotic, but then also land yourself in jail. You know what I mean? Like, and I also understand that my takes are not for everybody. I totally get that. But I am not going to be here for you to be your emotional support person to tell you exactly what you already want to hear. I'm going to be telling you stuff that you may have not thought about and just different ways of looking at things. So, yes, back to the conversation here. So, Chris tells me, I'm a hell of a lot better than Stu is. Which, by the way, I'm going to pause right there for a second. Like, bro, why the fuck would you even say that? So just so you know, that got prompted because I was like, are you okay? Like, why are you so emotional? Chris goes on to say, I'm just tired of listening to a bunch of people talk about stuff they don't have the proper IQ to be talking about. Case in point, you by telling me that they put him in a coma, which is a fact. He continues to say, as a human being, I'm genuinely disgusted on people's take about this. And your post just happened to have so little views that you actually saw what said and responded. Your proposal for a punishment is laughable, and people that share your view are why we have repeat offenders walking the streets hurting people after they spend a year in prison for beating someone half to death. Don't believe me? Watch the fucking news. Now, this is a lot of assumption because obviously he didn't listen to my full entire podcast. And again, like I said, I just gave a proposal because nobody else was giving a proposal. Like, I actually try to want people to get better in addition to serving and doing the crime. If you did something wrong, you go and do the time for it. I totally agree with that. However, nobody else was sharing my views. Everybody across the board had the same take of send him to jail, which I agree with, but then I'm like, hey, there's other aspects to this. And by the way, just because a social media post has so little views doesn't mean anything at all. It really doesn't. And I get that the whole as a human being thing, I get that. But do not give me your emotional state when it's supposed to be empathetic and compassionate if you want to be like, as a human being, blah, blah, blah. And then for people that walk the streets, like, we're not talking about anybody else. We're talking about one particular situation. And then I tell him to stop making assumptions and stop grouping me into everybody else because I am not everybody else. I decided to think about something different, decided to talk about a different path for this whole entire conversation. And then Chris over here says that you're assuming that I care about him. Stop assuming. As a man that has lost 2 people to senseless violence, Roger gave up his human card the second he threw that man's head into the ground with the intent of harm. I would just like to say that everybody has lost somebody. Just because you have such a pent-up emotion about this does not mean that your 2 people that you lost to senseless violence gets overshadowed by every single violent act that has ever happened in the history and recorded news as we know today, currently, and in the past. And to use that as a way to be like, Raja gave up his human card, it's like, yeah, Roger took it way too freaking far. Luckily, Stu woke up. But does that mean that, do you give the same kind of energy to everybody that does senseless violence? We still have senseless violence plaguing our communities, our neighborhoods, with all the gang violence, with all, drug dealers and all that kind of stuff. Like, are you giving those people the same kind of energy you were giving me yesterday by pushing back and saying that I'm stupid and that my proposal is stupid? And now, yes, I know that I said that he apologized, and he did. I only want to bring this up as a conversational talking point because these are not the conversations that we need to have about situations that are like this. Cooler heads need to prevail in a situation like this. You could be angry at the situation all you want, but we also need to take a step back and realize that even though we are all angry, and even though that we all want the same justice, meaning that Raja did the crime, Raja should do the time. However, we also have to let it play out and let the LAPD do what they need to do, even if the new information now is that the students at Knox Pro are being told not to talk to police and not to talk to the detective and do not get them further involved in this messy situation. We got to let it play out rather than all of us trying to be judge, jury, and executioner, even though we could see plain as day what happened. The evidence is there, but we are not the judge on this trial, if that makes sense. We can all have our opinions. We could all sort of speculate, but don't think that somebody is less empathetic than you, less emotional than you, if they're trying to give a nuanced kind of take, trying to smarten up the audience. Because again, most of the commenters don't know shit about the wrestling business. And I know about the wrestling business. So I don't like using this word, but I rather educate you guys on the wrestling business, what happens in the back, and stuff that is probably normal to people who work in the business that is not going to be normal to people outside of the business, aka the fans. And all of those fans can read the Wrestling Observer for years on years and waste $14 a month by getting nothing, because he has sat home and typed up so many articles and has been completely wrong and has never helped a day in his life for a wrestling promotion, hasn't put the ring together, hasn't helped out in the back with the talent. And this goes for the other dirt sheets too. And this goes for the dirt sheets over in the UK as well. That these people will tell you what it's like while they sit down on the armchair and tell you what's what behind the scenes, just because they're able to talk to the grunts that are very bitter in the business, and then just make up a bunch of shit and hope that like it becomes true. And you guys eat it up and you guys think you know the inside of the business, and you guys don't. So this is why I make these podcast episodes, not to chase clout and not to be like, hey, listen to me more. It's more about, hey, let me teach you something, because I enjoy teaching you guys about professional wrestling, teaching you guys about the ins and the outs, and teaching you guys what's what. Because if not, then like Jim Cornette said, that we would have lost pro wrestling that day that Roger decided to almost kill a man for no reason, just because he wanted to prove that he was tough, wanted to prove that he was his own man. And again, it goes back to everything that is not talked about. It goes back to all of the silence that he's dealing with, that Rampage is dealing with. And then, Chat can smell that. Chat could be like the sharks that smell blood in the water, and they know they could get under the skins of Rampage Jackson and Raja Jackson. That's why I was also throwing into this podcast episode about the fact that social media is going to eventually get restricted because of situations like this, unfortunate situations like this. Now, before, when we had the other real life streamer crash his car on the highway, we all just swept it under the rug. He didn't really go to jail or get some charges on him or just something to be like, hey, don't ever do that again. And then the real life streamers who decide to go to different countries and act a fool, and they get appropriate punishments. But over here in America, shit like this happens, and it's like, where's the accountability? Why is Raja still out there? And then for Danger Pro Wrestling to try to make a quote unquote joke about it and then get upset when all the wrestling dirt sheets cover it. And then luckily TMZ is all like, hey, this is not happening. He has been banned from the building or whatever it was. That TMZ was like, hey, yeah, this is not happening from them. Even Danger Pro Wrestling was like, yeah, this is not happening. It's just a joke. And they got upset that nobody reached out to them to ask them if this is true or get a statement from them. And I thought that was pretty stupid to even say that they wanted people to reach out to them, because me, as someone who covers pro wrestling, I do not consider myself a journalist. I consider myself an analyst. But if I were to reach out to ask for like an interview and be like, hey, is it true you're going to have Raja Jackson on your show? Like, if I just asked a question like that, wouldn't you as the promoter maybe think that you would tell me more of the joke, the AK, the lie, so that way I can do a write up or do a podcast episode and be like, yeah, guys, they're really serious about this. Because then they're going to think that that's more publicity for them on someone else's podcast where it could be listened to everybody around the world, or even a write-up where it could be read from everywhere around the world. So I thought that was pretty stupid to be like, how come you guys didn't reach out to us for getting a word before running with this? And it's like, you guys could have still played up the fact that, oh yeah, it's true, guys, it's true, make sure you go buy tickets to our shows. And in my head, I was really thinking about like, maybe a better question will be, hey, did you guys actually sell tickets by putting that coming soon Raja Jackson to Danger Pro Wrestling? Because I was legit curious. I was legit curious if they managed to sell more tickets because of that. Because, it's LA. LA supports the weirdest of shit. And LA is the most craziest state right now in current politics and in current days. So you never know. With that being said, Chris did say that he hopes that I forgive him for his ignorance and that he's sorry and that he realized that I have a passion about this and that I basically care about wrestling and we need more people like me and stuff like that. And he says that I hope you can accept this and forgive my ignorance. And I will say it here on the podcast that the next time, please make sure to listen to the podcast that I am promoting or the Substack newsletter that I am promoting before having an emotional trigger backlash at me when I'm like, I am agreeing with everybody's takes about sending him to jail. I just wanted to present a different side of this because I have more knowledge than all of the other bigger creators that are not in the wrestling space and that don't know about the wrestling business. I would also like to say to Chris that you are welcome to always have a conversation with me in the comment section. Just leave that emotion out. If there's something you disagree with, let me know that you disagree with, but also bring sources if you need to. Dirt sheets are not really good sources, but like really try to research something that backs up your claims for certain things. And even if you don't disagree with me on stuff and you let me know, that's okay too. But just don't be an asshole. That's all I ask, is don't be an asshole to come into my comment section when it could just be a very simple conversation of like, hey, I didn't agree with this point because of X, Y, and Z. I see it this way. And I don't know if you agree or not. I'm more for conversations and not for a yelling match where I know that you're not going to listen and I know that you're not going to have a different perspective or be open-minded. But I do appreciate that you took the time this morning to basically apologize to me. So I will accept your apology, but please do not make it a reoccurrence. That's all I ask. I am leaving up the comments up just to show that this is crazy, but I did talk about it. And I'm only talking about it because these are lessons to be learned. The same way that the title of this is Roger Jackson Gets Booked does not equal a lesson learned. Regardless if Danger Pro Wrestling wanted it to be a joke or just wanted to get the clout, you don't do that in the middle of everything that's going on, in the heightened tension of everybody being so emotional and pulling away and creating just a bad look for a company that wants to grow, a company that's been around for a year. And it's like, that was really bad in hindsight. Like, I get why you would do it, but not every idea is a good idea in the wake of this. We have a lot more pressing issues to really deal with. We have a lot more pressing issues that one day Rampage Jackson will go to therapy with his son, Roger Jackson, so that way they can get over this silence, get over this distance between them, and basically air it all out. Not on social media, not on live streams, and Rampage being the father that he wants everybody to believe that he is. And just people understanding the wrestling business just a little bit more. These are all just lessons that I want to talk about and bring awareness to, you know? I never want to sound like every other podcaster out there where they all sound the same and they all blend the same and there's no other nuance and there's no other type of proposal to be like, okay, we all are in agreement of this talking point. However, this is how I believe a solution could come about to fix the situation. Even if it doesn't fix it entirely, you're on the right track to make sure that people in society can become normal people and not control their emotions and not control their impulses to the point of having them land in jail. You know, I don't want to keep seeing degenerate shit on my timeline or in the news. We don't need any of that. We should be trying to live in peace and live in tolerance, and also realize that social media is a very toxic environment and it's the internet. You can literally turn off your phone and just enjoy the day and you would be fine. But of course, in order to make money and be seen, you got to be on social media and you got to have people that believe in you. You got to have a community that believes in you. And I've always said this in my past podcast episodes and even online, that depending on the person that you are following and you are supporting, the way they act is who they attract to their community. So if you are supporting somebody that is always negative, that is always trying to flip-flop and, tell you you shouldn't do this, but in the same breath that they do the opposite, they're going to attract those people into their chat. The same way that if you end up supporting somebody that always has a hypocritical take or is always clowning on somebody and showing you, yeah, this stupid person here tweeted this and we should laugh at them, and then show this person and this person and this person. And yeah, there are people online that have the most ridiculous bad takes in the world, but if you're going to give them attention, why would you do that? If you're not going to try to tell your chat, hey, let's look at this, let's analyze this, let's have a conversation about this, and let me tell you why I think this doesn't help conversations. This doesn't help progressing forward. This doesn't help X, Y, and Z. I'd rather leave you guys with just a little bit more knowledge on something, or I'd rather leave you guys with just a little bit more conversations to have, rather than being like, oh, let's laugh at this person. Ha 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 ha. That doesn't do anything. That just turns you into the bully that you preach. Oh, you should stop bullying. By you just laughing at somebody who has ridiculous, stupid takes, and most of those takes are probably given by a bot, not even a serious person, but you take it as a serious person and you want to show your chat, like, hey, look at this dumb person. You're being the bully that you say that you want to stop others from bullying. This is why I think that me approaching the Raja Jackson situation in the way that I do opens up the avenues for having these conversations and really looking at, is social media really the problem? How do we fix social media? How do we not allow social media to bully us and peer pressure us into doing stupid ass shit? How can we sort of detox from social media? Is social media really the key to get what you need to get in life? Or should we go back to getting out there into the world, going in a car ride, and networking the old-fashioned way by talking to people? Because even though social media is a help, it's also a curse. And this whole situation opens up that conversation, and that's all I want to do. This is why, again, I'm making this podcast episode. And it also opens up the conversation to all of the other wrestlers that are speaking out, and how Danger Pro Wrestling was also getting upset that the real people that TMZ should be going after is the guys over at Nox Pro because it's their fault and all this kind of stuff. This just shows how taking accountability for decisions across the board, and I am generalizing this just shows how taking accountability is very difficult as a whole for society, because we have social media, and social media propels the idea of just putting on somebody else. It's somebody's fault. Oh, you didn't agree with their take? Let's call them all the buzzwords in the world. That's what Rampage Jackson did to the MMA guru. But yeah, social media and the way that the news is constructed has basically created a whole generation and a whole new group of thinking of never take accountability when you should be taking accountability. And if you think about taking accountability, just put it on somebody else. With that being said, I really do hope that this whole Raja Jackson situation and Psycho Stu situation and Nox Pro wrestling situation gets justice and gets resolved. And if you are one of the students that happen to listen to this, if you are one of the students that you don't want to go talk to the police or the detective, go do it, because you know in your heart of heart that this was wrong. Everybody should take accountability for what happened, the setup, and just the whole entire situation. If you go and tell, don't even think about it as like you snitching. It's not that. This is way bigger than snitching. It's about justice. It's about, we shouldn't have another situation like this ever happen again. And it should definitely be a learning lesson. Make sure to do what's right for everyone involved. So if they are telling you not to go talk to them, go talk to them. But ultimately, it is up to you guys. I just think that the right thing to do is to just tell your side so that way they can get a statement and that true justice can actually happen. However, I do have to be realistic that this is LA. LA is shady. So I don't know. And LA is crazy and LA is weird. There's just a lot going on in LA that I don't know if common sense and true justice can actually prevail. If this was done in another state, maybe like a red state, justice will prevail with all evidence submitted. But it's LA, you know. But I am happy that the investigation is getting somewhere. But again, we still have Raja out there, and then Danger Pro Wrestling thought it was funny to be like, hey, we're booking him. And I'm like, that should not be a reward. That should not get into people's heads as if that is the reward, because then you're just going to have people coming into the comment sections and being trolls and being stupid. This is why I say that not all ideas are a good idea. So to the wrestlers, do as you wish, but I will say that I want this whole situation to be resolved, because I don't really know what else to talk about. I don't know if I'm going to make a part 3 if new information comes out and I have to talk about it, sure. But if you guys want me to continue to talk about it, drop some comments below, drop your thoughts, drop anything that you want me to have a thought about. Like, I don't want to say a reaction to, but if you want to get my thoughts on something, you could drop it down in the comments below. But other than that, I think that this has been enough at this point. I mean, I will leave you with this one, that Mark Henry's response to this situation is the most worst take that I have ever heard. The worst take. Other than that, I don't really know what else to respond to. But if there is more stuff that comes out that needs to be talked about, that needs to be have a conversation about it in a different way, then yeah, I will continue. But for the meantime, this is the end of the podcast. Again, I want to thank everybody that has went over to the Substack free wrestling newsletter, marieshadows.substack.com. And thank you guys so much for 594 downloads within 48 hours of the first episode dropping. And no, I did not plan that at all. I don't plan these things. If it happens naturally, I am so grateful. I am so thankful. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you can support me at youtube.com/Square Circle Podcast /join. You could get a membership there. If you guys want to sign up for the free wrestling newsletter, you could always upgrade later. marieshadows.substack.com. The Square Circle Podcast, it's on Spotify and all podcasting platforms. I am also on Rumble as well. Rumble.com/user/Marie Shadows. I do have a merchandise store, and I am revamping my memberships on Fourth Wall. Fourth Wall is very similar to Patreon, but Fourth Wall is for creators by creators, and they have my vision in mind for what I want to do for Fourth Wall and all my creativity. So head over to Fourth Wall. That link will be down in the description below and also in the comment section. And all of this support, I am so thankful for you guys for every step of the way. If you are new here, welcome. If you are here with me since day one, because this is a 6-year-old podcast, thank you guys so much for being on this journey with me. And if you want more content from me that is not talking about these kind of topics, I do a tape study series where I break down professional wrestling matches and analyze professional wrestling matches. Just recently, YouTube blocked 3 New Japan Pro Wrestling tape study videos. So head over to Rumble in order to watch them in full for free. But if you do, make sure to send a tip to buymeacoffee.com/Marie Shadows, because those take a lot of time to prepare and basically upload for you guys. But also you can upgrade that Substack newsletter subscription to unlock the tape study series and watch my breakdown and see how much I truly love professional wrestling. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to this brand new episode of the Square Circle Podcast, continuing to talk about the Rampage Jackson situation and Danger Pro Wrestling. I am your host, Marie Shadows, and I'll see you guys on the next one.